In my early careers, one of product leaders who was very influential to me used to say to me, Shub, if we can't measure it, don't build it. So if you think about in that way, if you can't measure trust, how are we even talking about trust?
That's Shub Agarwal, AI author and educator. Shub is a pioneer in AI, building long before the mainstream had a name for the work. His story is one of unusually fast growth and a rare instinct for where AI was heading. But at the height of that rise came a sudden halt. A moment that could have ended his momentum, but instead gave him a new, disciplined way of leading in a field that rarely slows down. I'm Thomas Bean, and this is Data Science Leaders. Shub was at the center of some of the fastest AI growth and once-in-a-lifetime opportunities. He was so early that some of those first conversations sound almost ridiculous today.
I distinctly remember I was sitting in the room, we were talking with a lot of people, we were brainstorming with our SVP. I said, what if we call it human plus AI? That AI is not supposed to replace you, it is supposed to work with you. And then we created this nice image of human and AI handshaking and working together as a team. So we had to come up with a way for people to understand the value of it.
And those early conversations of bringing users into the promise of AI led to exciting professional and personal opportunities. So it's late 2019. What do you think your future held in store in terms of maybe the technology and the vision? How are you looking at the future then?
Converska at that time was going through a very, very good run. So we had a rejected acquisition offer from a very, very large company. And it was one of the very few companies in that kind of space doing that kind of work. We had 2,000 clients, including Microsoft.
At the same time, you were actually interacting with Google and Meta, who was trying to hire you based on the vision and what you had built. So, what kind of roles did they approach you with? What did it look like?
So Google had reached out to me for a leadership role in Google Cloud, in AI group. Meta had reached out in their AI group as well.
Sheb had it all: the pace, the recognition, and a chance to do even more. But something underneath that momentum was starting to strain, and soon his focus was being tested in ways he couldn't imagine.
It was September 2020, peak of COVID. Um, and a wave of COVID has hit India. And I was in a delusion that it can never happen. And my dad will say, Shub, one day I'll go away. I said, Dad, stop talking about that. Never say things like that. Nothing is going to happen to you. And I meant it. He was very, very fit. He will wake up at 4 a.m. in morning every day, go for a run. He was extremely fit. And he said, oh, these are the hard times. My student need help. And I told him, Dad, you can't go at this time. It's COVID. It's very risky for you. He was very, very committed educator. So he went with over there and he catched COVID. And I didn't even know. And within 3 days, he passed away. It was all work from home that time. I was working from home, and I was getting these calls, as I said, from Google and Meta for head of. I was interviewing. I was actually in final rounds of interviews with them. I put everything on aside. I said they kept on emailing me for 6 months, and I had a different priorities. I needed to take care of my family first, and I started writing, and I starting doing other things. So I shifted my priorities at that time. But I was very clear in my head that I have been a builder. I can go back to Valley anytime I want, but I need to first explore myself. I used to have very deep conversations with my dad on what should we all be doing, and he always thought teaching is very important, educating the next generation is very important, and he used to always say it's in your DNA. I know working in industry, earning money, building stuff, fine. But teaching is in your DNA. I know you'll turn around and come around and do that. And I didn't take him that seriously until that time. But once he passed away, because it was very hard for me, because I never thought it could happen to me. I mean, honestly, I was in that state. It gave me a realization that I need to think about things differently, about life.
So after this period, hard period, you leave Conversica and then you choose to join a financial regulator. So tell us how this opportunity came about, because it's quite the contrast between the two environments, I suppose. So how did the opportunity come to you?
Yeah. So with I wanted some space to think while keep on making an impact in industry. And this opportunity fell accidentally in my lap. They reached out. They wanted someone to come in and think about AI transformation for regulatory world and how AI can transform it, build those teams, build those capabilities, build the product muscle around it. And and I thought it was interesting. I've worked for corporate all along. What if I try to make impact at a United States level in some way? And that's what that opportunity was. um, Making an impact across United States financial markets to protect them. And I felt it was a great set of people and a different side. And what and it I felt it will allow me some space alongside while making impact to do other things, and start exploring other things as well in parallel. Ultimately, what allowed me to survive or succeed there was that foundation understanding and intuition around how to think about AI in a systematic way, how to think about product in a systematic way, what makes product in AI successful, learning those complexities and then applying and shaping those. And they knew I didn't had a background, but they were totally okay with that. And that was actually a very, very good run.
Was it part of the attraction also that you could come with fresh ideas and kind of challenge the status quo a little bit with a different vision on these technology, even maybe the talent aspect?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there were two pieces. They wanted someone who understands the product from a foundation and fundamental perspective and what product to do, because not organizations honestly are ready from product management standpoint as well, and product leadership standpoint and product thinking. uh, Building that in organization was one of the reasons. The second was the background in AI and how I can apply AI in a systematic way. And that's another part of the story where during that time I started thinking of codifying it in a way that um, will I can share it to others. Initially, it was in my head as a way of doing things, but then I had to codify it ultimately for others to start building and start using it.
And at the same time, maybe using some of the space you were looking for, you started writing. So was did you start writing about this, or did you start writing on other topics?
So I actually created a presentation to teach my team, and I created a framework on building AI products, and it was a 9 step framework. And I created that, and I got an overwhelmingly positive response from my team. Everyone was, oh, that makes a lot of sense. Oh, this is very holistic. And now I understand. And that slide I created for the 9 step framework is what I ultimately converted into a book. Um, it started that way. Of course, it went through a lot of revisions with thinking as it is evolving. But I was focusing a lot on principles over tools, and instead of chasing tools and trends, I was focusing a lot on principles that will endure for a long time to come. So they fundamentally remained same for since that time to now.
And despite all the changes that happened to with Gen AI and such, so it became a foundation of fees, which is super interesting. At the same time that you started writing, around the same time, you also started teaching, which is also something you had discussed with your father. So, how did the opportunity came to you? The When USC contacted you, or you found out about the opportunity at USC?
Yeah, and I think this is where maybe the life is. If you have an intent, it comes to you. Um, and I, I, I actually randomly applied only to one position at USC. I saw that it was a position. I just submit my resume and I forgot about it. And who submits a resume and gets a response? And I got a response, an email, and then wanted to talk to me. And the interesting story is I talked to the director of that academic program over there, and I said, okay, what do you want me to do? You want me to come and do guest lectures? Well, no, I want you to teach a class. Okay, so I said, do you want me to teach a class with another instructor? Said, no, it's your class. You will go come, create a class, teach a class. I said, interesting. Okay, let me try. But I got overwhelmingly positive response I had not expected, and I decided I will keep on going.
So, how did these new roles for you that you started, how did it came back to actually shape you? There was probably a sense of completion or alignment, as you said, but did it change also the way you led on a professional side and such?
I think it definitely made me more mature, made me more fearless, and I think it also made me a better thought leader, because now I was blending not only what is happening in industry but also cutting edge what is happening in academics and research and applying it to industry and creating that loop, which was very very interesting. And the things I wanted to learn, I could put it and start teaching it. And so my learning started growing at exponential rate. And writing also gave me a lot of clarity, thought, and purpose, and allowed me to pull a lot of these ideas that are in your head, and putting those principles on paper is very hard.
It's very interesting to hear you speak. Sometimes start sentences in a starter mode where you use the word operator, which is typical startup, and then end up with the scale of academia. It's fascinating. Was there a moment where you realized like all of these things had come together, and maybe you were exactly on the same path your father had been almost like waiting for you? Was there is there a moment where you had this realization?
I do think sometimes if my father was here, he will probably say that you are in a path I wanted you to be at. I think he will say that. He wanted me to teach, he wanted me to write, and I'll keep on doing that because it really gives me fulfillment. It really gives me the fulfillment and I didn't know I will have.
They also made you ready. What's extremely interesting about your arc and your journey, you were part of academia, you're teaching, you were early AI pioneer in a commercial sense and creating these experiences. You've been on the regulation side, you've been also on the startup side. And then happens Gen AI and all the architectures. Like, how did you live this moment? Because you had been working some of these things. So what did it trigger in you? Did it change your perspective actually?
One aspect, I know there's a lot that has changed, but a lot that has not changed. And if you develop intuition, what will happen is you will be able to ride the wave instead of chasing the trends. That's what I try to teach my students as well. So yes, Gen AI happened, but it was not that different for me. It was natural evolution on what was coming. I had to update some of those implications, some of those metrics. So I had to go through that update before I republish the book. Um, that delayed my project for sure, the publishing project for sure. But it was very natural to me, and actually it became even more important for me that um I contribute in that area, in this field, because I was in this from 20 years, and I was always a small set of people who were doing this work, and everyone is company thinks I'm weird, and now it's mainstream. So I just wanted to now make an impact from mainstream perspective, given how important it is, and how it is important for the industry and for the humanity.
What surprised you the most in terms of how teams or maybe even customers responded to GenAI? Some of the things you called super early, and kudos to your vision. The nine elements are still there and adapted a little bit. So, but were there elements that were surprises to you?
Yeah. So from customer standpoint, I think one interesting surprise was, because it became a household name, every individual wanted to understand it in some way, use it in some way, and companies now want to embed them as part of their core business instead of being as a side project, something as an afterthought. So that is very interesting, positive surprise, how it has become a discussion that CEO is having, instead of just, there was not chief AI officer role, but chief data science officer role, or chief CTO role, or chief product role. um, except for companies that envisioned it much earlier, right? Netflix and Amazon are example. Jeff Bezos in 1997 letter talks about personalization in his core shareholder strategy, right? So it was there in minds of a lot of visionaries, but now it became in mind of every mainstream company. So that's one thing that surprised me. I think another piece that no one predicted was actually, which is very surprising, is whenever we were doing this conversational AI, we knew that it will be much more powerful. Uh, but we didn't know that it could ever generate more than a paragraph, and now it generates pages of well structured, thoughtful content. And because we broke the code on language, so we had earlier broken the code on prediction at some level, then we started breaking the code on vision at some level. That's how self-driving cars are made. But language was something that was the hardest to crack, and there was no breakthrough before transformer on the language side. uh, and if you actually think about it in a little bit of a deep way, what you'll realize is language is the core reason how humans interact with each other and innovate. And if you crack that code, you are essentially unlocking a very different kind of intelligence and very different kinds of capability. And that is why GenAI is different. And that is how it has surprised me, how applications of GenAI is so widespread. Um, it is just language, but because language is the connector for everything, it is impacting the vision, it is impacting the prediction, it is impacting each and every aspects of traditional ML2, which are not related to language, but it is impacting all of those.
In this context, and you've worked at regulators, and now you worked at US Bank, a heavily regulated environment. Then, as a leader, how are you looking at this incredible potential, but the way to manage the risk or keep actually the uh, AI to behave in a certain boundaries. People talk about governance, people talk about compliance and such, but this, how do you look at this? You have a product view on things, but also you need to make sure the product sticks to really how it drives value. Has your perspective on such processes changed, especially having worked for regulators before?
Yeah. So I'll say few different things. And because I work for regulators, I am not afraid to talk to risk teams and have a conversation around how to solve a problem and how to move things forward. I talk to them and understand what risk they are trying to solve for, what policy they want to make sure is addressed. And then instead of they giving a solution, I ask them, okay, after you have told me the problem you're trying to solve, let me give you a solution, let me see if it is acceptable to you or not. And then I'll try to think hard and think of solution that will be at the intersection of uh, that risk and at the business benefit and the customer benefit, and that has allowed me to move these things forward. So that's, I guess, the first thing. A lot of people get frozen with what is happening, and therefore they are not able to move these conversation forward in the industry because they don't know how to move it forward. And then you have to figure that out, working towards it, narrowing the scope if necessary, making sure there's a trust built between the team so that you can have those conversations. Now, second is obviously the governance responsibility we talk about, that is very super critical and important. One mental model I have in my head is, and I try to talk to everyone, is AI is evolving and AI is going to evolve and AI is going to surprise you. It's like a kid, you teach something and he will surprise you in the ways you never imagined. If you have given your kid right parameters, right moral structure, right data points, then those surprises will be positive instead of negative. And that's essentially, that's what translates into the guardrails you talk about. You put guardrails there, you have audit trails, you have moral ops, you have metrics, you have these operational rhythms. Essentially that is what it is. You want to make sure these surprises are going to happen, they're benefit for your business, not a negative impact on your business. I think the third thing I started thinking hard about was, which is more recent, a lot of people are talking about trust, but we don't measure it. And there's a saying in industry that, and in product at least, one of my in my early careers, one of product leaders who was very influential to me used to say to me, Shub, if we can't measure it, don't build it. So if you think about in that way, if you can't measure trust, how are we even talking about trust? And performance of a model is not equivalent to trust in a model. And we have proven that. So I created, as part of this academic, apart from this industry in academic setting, I actually recently founded a lab at USC called as AI Trust Lab, AI Trust Hub. Um, and the goal of that is to actually evaluate models and agents on trust. So we came up with this framework to score and evaluate the trusts, and that's the fundamental foundation work we are doing. And my hope is, if we can measure trust in an effective way, it will move the industry forward, because trust is the last frontier.
Thank you. I love the idea of being proactive and then educating your AI versus governing it, and then being able having a tangible foundation and measurable foundation of trust, especially in a context. I want to get your opinion where you spoke about getting to a sense of scale when you went to the regulators. Now the application of AI is beyond just. I mean, I know people talk about agents and such, but we're going at the process level, even at the government. So the impact is massive. How do you feel that we're going to keep on transforming this way, and how does it mean for you, a leader, in terms of the scale of the impact that you can now have? Does this do you look at uh, these initiatives in a different way?
Yeah, there's agentic AI, but now these agentic AI are going to transform each and every pieces of this ecosystem and the processes that humans have fundamentally done. And a lot of assumptions that we have made are going to be tested and pressure tested. And a lot of things we have built, maybe agents can help us do those. I think the first is, if you go in a level of process transformation of the company where humans are involved, and when you bring the agents in to do the job, there are two things. One is there's a fear from people that they will lose their jobs. And the way, at least I want to position and think about this, is how can we empower our workforce, empower our teams, so that they are better equipped to do the work and these agents are helping them do their job, and making them more impactful and effective. So again, coming back to the human plus AI piece of it, I'll give you an example. If you think of a sales rep, and if you ask a sales rep, hey, do you like pulling all this data about the customer and going through these SQL databases and pulling all the document, and they don't. They want to talk to the customer, see in their eyes, and sell the product and build that relationship and sell more and sell more. But they are bogged down with this data today before they can have an effective conversation, or they're scared to not have any conversation at all because they don't know anything about the customer. Both are problematic. Now, if I try to bring an agent in that gives that power to them, it's actually beneficial to them. But there's initially a visceral reaction where you say, oh, this is going to take my job because I used to do that. 70% of my job was pulling data. What if I make third, but the payment comes from that 30% job when you close the deals? What if I make your job 100% sales job? You're going to make more money, more effective. The company is going to benefit. So there's like an education that you have to go through, and once you go through that, then you get a lot of positive reaction and adoption and excitement. So that's one of the very, very important things I have seen from the agentic standpoint and the process standpoint. I think another piece we have to worry about is, I think of it as, and maybe I'll go back a little bit philosophically and then I'll come to one more philosophy. If you think in 1970s, we didn't have software. We used to manage people. It was industry, and these we are managing people, we are getting work done from people. And then the softwares came in. We started, of course, we are managing people, but we are managing softwares even more than people. Now, agents are coming in. We are going to go in the same word of managing some kind of beings, even if they're digital beings. So, if we are going to do that, they need to be performance managed, and we should be able to work with people we trust. So, we should be able to work with beings that we are going to trust. So, we need this new mental model and framework around how do we manage these agents, because these are workers, literally our workers within our company, within, and they're reporting to us. And even if earlier you used to be IC, individual contributor, now you have 10 agents reporting to you, everyone is a manager. And you need to have that management capability to make sure the tasks are assigned to the agents and they're managed and they're trusted, very similar to a job a manager has. So that's the second piece of a shift, the skill set development of people. And maybe third is, when all these processes change, and I think coming back to the point one, we will come to a word, and this is where I'm AI optimistic. We'll come to a word where we will start doing more meaningful work, because who decided? I don't know who decided our jobs is to stare at a computer and do data entry. Who decided? And why are we happy about it? I don't know why we are happy about it. What if our jobs were entirely different? Imagine, I was thinking about it one day. Imagine the plants grow on their own. We don't have to worry about it. They grow. What if they didn't grow and we had to do things to make them grow? And then we attached ourselves to that job of making sure plants grow inch by inch instead of they growing on their own. And now, if plants start growing on their own, we feel threatened that our jobs are going away. Humans have enough problems to solve that will create new problems for ourselves. Maybe we'll explore space, who knows? And maybe the people who were less equipped to do jobs like we did, they will all replace us and they will do those jobs. And maybe we'll do some other jobs.
I love this perspective of being AI optimistic and that AI is going to make us somehow more human. Last question for you. If you think back about who you were in 2019 and you think about this person today, what would you tell this person? This person that's fast, ambitious, and wants to build. Today, what would be your advice to this person?
Explore other dimensions, uh, be more patient, keep on building fast. That's important. But there are other dimensions that help reinforce them, and that's why sometimes slowing down is not a bad idea.
Shub's story reminds us that life's hardest moments are opportunities to reshape our approaches to leadership and the need to build the world around us with intentionality and clarity. What especially resonated with me was how Shub has blended his vision for AI, which has been very consistent across the various ages of AI, but also the other elements, the influence of his father that led him to become not only an entrepreneur and a leader, but also a teacher to maximize the impact and help realize his vision. Shub's book is Successful AI Product Creation, a 9-step framework. To see it and learn more about Shub, check out the show description. If this episode resonated with you, please leave a rating or review. It helps other AI leaders find stories like Shub's. This is Data Science Leaders, where we learn from real experiences of those building and governing the intelligence systems shaping our world. A show by AI leaders for AI leaders. This show is brought to you by Domino Data Lab, trusted by the world's most advanced enterprises to operationalize AI responsibly and at scale. I'm Thomas Bean. Thanks for joining us.